to it because we've been in so many meetings together over the years. So one of the things that came out of the pandemic was right after the county declared the state of an emergency, they requested me into the emergency operations center. And so when they do that, you just go. It's not something you say, oh, I'm busy or anything like that. It is, you go. And the reason they brought me in is food. They had to suddenly change up everything they knew about food supply. We had food banks that needed large quantities of food really fast, and they couldn't get them. Every daycare, every childcare place had no food, and they needed it. We look at the schools that were doing lunches, and they couldn't do them anymore because what they cooked and what they had to cook with and always had ordered was stuff that you make in the cafeteria, and kids come in and they sit down and they eat a hot meal. So we instantly had to change everything over to a grab and go. And with the food bank was the biggest issue because they couldn't get any supplies. So if we look at Food Lifeline or Second Harvest or any of those, they only had so much food to distribute, and everything came down so fast that they didn't have anything to distribute. And that's where we really had to look at our food systems and say, how do we, number one, get food to where it's needed and do it now? And second, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? You know, if we have a situation that like this that happens again, we obviously had no idea at the time that this was going to continue for 2 years or whatever it's going to be, but they realized really fast that we have a broken system. And for those of us that work in food systems all the time, you know, we know it. We've been saying it for years. We saw it with 9/11 and now seeing it again. So how do we create a food system that makes sure that the people that live in Snohomish County are going to have food to eat? And the first thing they did when they asked me to come in was, well, we need our farmers to be able to provide food. Are there farmers that can grow for us and get food to the food banks? The first thing was, well, it's March, so probably not. So even a lack of understanding of the season and what we grow. So that education had to happen. And it also showed the importance of shoulder season growing, out of season growing, and how do we make sure that we can grow enough food for the people that live here, let alone King County. You know, there's a lot of hungry people in a situation like this. And then add in all of the unemployment, all of the different things that add to food insecurity. That's when we were approached by the 5G Open Innovation Lab. And they had been looking at different opportunities in different sectors to be able to bring 5G to a specific site and do test work. We were able to take $1 million of CARES funding around food resiliency and put it towards this effort. And this is the first in the nation to create something that focuses on food and 5G technology and looking at what is the new technology that we could be using and creating, I call it a giant sandbox. They later told me that in the tech industry, a sandbox is a really bad thing. But to me, Farmer Linda, a sandbox makes more sense. So it creates a sandbox that all these companies can bring their toys and they can try them out in real world. They can create it in the lab and they can have a really great idea, but does it work in the field? To take it out and try it and tweak it and see what needs to be done, see what works, what doesn't work, that didn't exist for agriculture. So that's what we created. I'm going to show you a video of what we did in that first year and kind of talks about how we got to this place and what the future is and what agriculture has been lacking. And when Sarah and I just did it, it popped right up, didn't it, Sarah?
It did. Let's give it a minute and then we can try my screen if it doesn't load.
Okay, there we go.
To be a farmer and make it, you got to be innovative in order to survive in this industry. You're very dependent on the weather. You're very dependent on what Mother Nature wants to bring you.
They kind of said if you dream it, we can make it happen. So I'm like, well, I got all kinds of dreams, so let's see what we can do.
If we lose these farms, we lose our food security. Every time a
And it did it again.
piece of land goes out of production, it's heartbreaking because we can never replace that land. That land becomes a subdivision, it becomes a strip mall. And to keep these farms here, they have to be economically viable.
The commercial side of rural America doesn't have that access to the data and the applications and the infrastructure that could help them become a lot more efficient. The stuff we take for granted is not something that these farmers get to enjoy because in many cases, they're just precluded from access to the internet.
What we hope to do here is democratize that technology for farmers.
Getting to a point where they can use data to inform a more efficient approach will enable them to be more competitive and ultimately enable them to set up the farm so that they can pass it on to the next generation.
Technology can be really exciting, but it's only as valuable as the outcomes, right, that we can help drive for the communities that are leveraging this technology.
Whether it's a small boutique farm or it's a large commercial farm or somewhere in between. This project provides the information that they need to be economically viable.
So the vision behind what we're doing here is to try to bring together entrepreneurs, industry partners, public and private institutions, and really bring the expertise to solve real world problems. One of the things that we have to do as part of that is to bring growers and farmers who actually are living this every day and have the real problems and start working with technology companies so that you can build solutions that are actually meaningful and will deliver value.
In order for the American farmer to survive, we have to improve our efficiencies in our operations. We have to figure out a way to produce more food on less acres.
Nature is complex, it's dynamic, it's different every day. There is no industry comparable to farming in terms of the potential volume and effective use of data. But there's also no industry that has been further disconnected from data than farming. We're here to open the door.
Snohomish County is a county of about 850,000 people. We're the next county north of Seattle and King County. We're an extremely diverse county in terms of geographies and industries, businesses, and people. Seattle region and Puget Sound region is really known for the innovation that's happened here. We've got, Microsoft and Amazon and just amazing companies doing cutting-edge work in technology and information management. At some point, you have to have cross-fertilization with the people that can use those tools. Linda.neunzig is just an amazing employee, has been with Snohomish County for a number of years. She has a farm up in the north part of the county, so she knows the business and the industry and the people and the language and the needs. It actually generated out of Linda talking with the agricultural community and thinking about some of the amazing technology and how they might be applied to agriculture.
One key piece that we learned through COVID is how fragile our food system is. As the CARES funding started settling in, it became an opportunity to really secure our food system.
One of the things that we've become aware of through COVID was that there's an issue of resiliency in our food supply chain. It all starts on places like this farm. Growers are interrupted in what they're doing, if distributors are disrupted in terms of what they're doing and getting our food supply to us because of issues like COVID, what we want to do is to bring technology out to them to try to alleviate some of those problems and be predictive and avoid some of those problems so that there's no disruptions to our food supply chain.
Linda.neunzig contacted me. What she was asking me was, would you be willing to bring technology out to the farm? and see if we can, change the way we do things around here and learn from it as well.
She explained it as, providing high-speed internet and access to it in rural areas, which is great because we really don't have any except for whatever we get through our cell phones. I'm excited about it to see what they come up with and see how it can change, how it can make my operation better.
Every industry is important, but I can't think of one that's more important than agriculture. It's our sustainability. It's one of the industries that has not seen as much innovation from a data perspective. And for smaller farmers and for larger farmers, just that access today will have a meaningful impact to their bottom line.
So all this is brand new. In fact, it was in January of 2020 that the FCC finally flipped the switch and said, okay, we can use this band commercially.
We're providing real help to optimize businesses with spectrum that the government specifically wanted to see this kind of innovation.
Doing it at a real farm is going to give us an actual set of conditions to test this technology out at and make sure when it does go to market at this scale, we've tested it in a real environment, not just simply in someone's backyard.
You look at the brands behind it. They're industry-leading, really powerful brands that, if they wanted to, could probably try and say, hey, we're going to solve this problem themselves. But actually, they've said, actually, if we work together, we solve the problem faster and we solve the problem in a better way. So that's pretty monumental.
What you're seeing is that combination of big companies and small startups. The big companies have the ability to bring those platforms, to bring capabilities, tools, foundations for innovation. Those are things that many startups don't have. They don't have access to big licenses or platforms or hardware or bandwidth or antennas. 5G Oil is really bringing those capabilities to startups.
At T-Mobile, we are building a 5G network that'll reach all Americans. But we also know this is something that is much bigger than ourselves, and that's why we're excited to be part of the Food Resiliency Project.
It's all about taking the tribal knowledge of the farmer and the technology people. You have to find ways to integrate and communicate, building tools and systems to help people who are doing God's work to get this done, really just making it happen.
These technologies are going to power things like smart farms, smart hospitals, smart cars, smart factories. So Microsoft is a big believer in those technologies. But we also know that there's a lot of work to be done, and the best way to do that is to get out on the farm, so to speak, and do some real-life test cases. To survive, farms need to be efficient, and that means they need access to the latest technology, including, connected solutions.
When we talk about farm to table, this is really technology to farm to table. You really complete the circle. When everybody worried about our health, everybody worried about food scarcity, when we started at this 5G Open Innovation Lab, we have this notion that it takes a village. It's really an entire chain that comes together. This is probably the best way that we can give back to the society.
When you look at 5G, together with edge computing, these are building blocks that other industries are using. A lot of what we're learning here as far as building a infrastructure, a platform for use case delivery, and those use cases are going to be across a spectrum of verticals. Whatever we learn here is definitely going to be able to be applied across other industries.
We're out in a real county with real farms, building real networks and starting to run real use cases. And I think that's the really exciting thing. This is not just a lab exercise. This is, let's get out there, let's just make this work.
Today, it's the good that we do with technology, and it's the change that we bring about in the world. And the 5G Open Innovation Lab is that venue.
The potential of having technology on your farm and learning from that technology is going to be a huge plus for us.
When you look at data, you don't know what's going to come out of the data. All you know is you do that data, you go through it, and sometimes you're surprised, and that creates real value. So that's what we're hoping to do.
Your farmers are the most innovative people you will ever meet. If something's broken, they will figure out how to fix it. And that's really not any different than the technology world. They see a problem and they fix a problem. So it's going to be really exciting to see how these two worlds marry and the respect that we know they're going to have for each other and what they do. It's a very exciting time for agriculture and for technology.
What are you excited for your kids?
With my kids, and you're gonna make me teary-eyed actually, to tell you the truth. With my kids, I remember being with my dad and seeing his innovation and seeing him trying new things. And they can say, hey, you know, their dad also tries new things. And I really feel like we can be a great example to what this has the potential to do.
Okay, obviously I do not have 5G because I can't download that quickly. So it's been a short period of time since we started it. We got the funding in October. We were able to start work in November, but we had to be done by January 1st. The people that came together to make this happen were pretty amazing. And it was large corporations, and it was CEOs and CTOs of these corporations that all said, we need this to happen. And so in order to do that, they threw everything they had, technology-wise, time-wise, and they came together in a way that was not at all competitive. They all came together knowing that they were not going to benefit from it at all. All of the $1 million went purely for infrastructure. None of them were getting paid to do what they did. It was for the common good of creating something around agriculture that was going to make a difference. So this is a graphic that I think really depicts a lot of what technology is doing and can do in agriculture. Everything from the sheep and the cows with collars, and that actually already exists on cattle. If you go into a dairy farm, a more advanced one, they have readers, and those readers can tell you absolutely everything that has gone on in that cow's life. So it reads it, the RFID tag, as they come in on the computer screen. Everything you ever wanted to know about that cow will be in there. Who is she bred to? How many pounds of milk did she give yesterday? Is she on track to do the same today? How many pounds has she produced in her life? When was she vaccinated? How many calves has she had? When is she going to calve again? All that kind of information is on there. And like with the sheep, there are tags that can tell you where those sheep are at any given time. And you kind of go through, and there's just a tremendous amount of technology that can be used, and the future of technology in agriculture. And here's a good example. This is out at Andrew Albert's farm, and this is working with Steve Mantle of Innovate Ag. And this crazy looking four-wheeler has, I believe it's 20 sensors on it. If we look at the one down here in the front, that's soil optics. And then all these other ones do completely different things. Some will read tree canopy. It's amazing. One will read pest and one will read, you know, something else. They can measure how much a tree trunk breathes, all these crazy things. But the soil optics thing is what I want to talk about first. And this will go through and it'll monitor, it'll measure everything you can imagine in the soil. So here's an example of when that runs across the soil, what all it's getting. And it's going to be going at 20 miles an hour. So it goes pretty quick. And you've got a computer screen where you're mapping exactly where you are to make sure you get the full piece of farmland without missing any spots. So everything from your silt and sand to clay, your CPK, everything is in there. And that way, when you go to fertilize, you know exactly where you need what, rather than just putting a whole bunch of fertilizer and not knowing if you've got it in the right spots or too much in one spot. So you can do more of a prescribed application. And the CPK on all of these over here, those are currently done with a soil test, which is very accurate. And this just provides one more way to do it. Okay, this one's not going to load. There we go. It's loading slowly. So part of the project is working with WSU on their WeatherNet, their weather station. And here's a good example. This is one of their slides of what their mission and mandate is. And they've been doing this for a while, but doing it, somewhat slowly. They have 3 different types of weather stations, a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3. So on the 2 farms that we did the 5G Open Innovation Project on, we have a tier 2 and a tier 3 on those. And in addition to the weather station, we also put in soil sensors. And the soil sensors that we have in one of them, and that we put more throughout the county, measures the soil at 4 inches and 8 inches. The one that we have out at Swans Trail Farm measures it every 2 inches for, I believe, 16 inches down. So where we have them right now, we installed one at Swans Trail Farm with the 5G project, one at Andrews Hay as well. And then working with surface water management, we were able to get one installed at the Williams Farm in Stanwood, it's down near Port Susan, and the Gronevelt Dairy in Sultan. Stalker Farms in Snohomish has had one for a really long time. It's pretty outdated, but it is still there. What WSU has done is they've gone through and they've made a graph of where in both river valleys we could complete the weather stations that would cover every bit of land, so that we really know what's happening in the valleys as far as soil moisture, temperatures, everything. And let me see if I can pull it up for you. And the nice thing about doing this, and what makes it work so well for us, is that these are open to anybody. So you can go on to this site at any time, click on any weather station that you want to, and it'll show you exactly what's happening at that time and what the changes are. So let's come up to here. So we can see that's Arlington. So that's Andrew. And this is in real time. And so we can tell that right now it's 38.1 degrees. We got wind at 5 miles per hour. And now we can go down and look at the soil temperature. So at 2 inches, it's 41.5. And if we go down to 8 inches, it's 43.2. So these temperatures of the soil are going to make a big difference when he goes to plant. When he goes to water, what is the soil moisture content? So if we look down there, it's pretty wet. Its ability to absorb water is minus 7.5. Then we can come over here to that Swans Trail or Stalker. This one, oh no, that's Langley. It's really hard to figure them. So here's Sultan. This is the other one that the county paid for. And this is at the Gronevelt Dairy. And you can see all of the same things there. So you can look at his soil temperatures. You can look at the temperature outside, and it gives you some history as well. The other thing to look at too is the leaf wetness. That's an unusual one that you won't necessarily see. Let's see. There's Arlington. This should be Port Susan. There we go. Here's the Stanwood then. This is at Rick Williams' farm. You can see it's a little bit warmer there. We can go down to his soil, and you can see it's got a lot more moisture in it than what the upland ones had. And then let's see if we can get to Swans Trail. That one, Swans Trail. So yep, that one right there should be Swans Trail. So it's pretty interesting. So when you get a chance, go ahead and go online and look at those, and you can kind of see, play around with it, because it's pretty fun to see what all they can do. So to finish out the net of what we need to have throughout both river valleys would be 10 more weather stations, and then we would include the soil sensors on those as well. And this gives you a good example of how it works and what we can do. So using the soil optics, you're getting more information there, putting the soil probes in, and then we look at the irrigation and when it needs to be irrigated and when it doesn't need to be irrigated. And then at Andrews, we were able to set that up to the automated irrigation system. And he can literally run all of his irrigation by his cell phone. I love the story that he told me that he used to get into the house at about 11:30 at night. He's got 2 small kids. He said once he started doing this and no longer has to go out and do all the other stuff, he's able to get into the house at 9:30 at night. So when you've got kids and you want to try and spend a little bit of time with them before they're gone to bed, this can make a big difference. So now when we look at the use of water, one of the things that we found at Swan's Trail where we're able to better monitor it, because it's telling him when he needs water and doesn't need water, he's had a water reduction of 50 to 75%. You know, in the past, you know, you go out there and you kick the soil, you dig it down with your boot and see what's under there. And that's just, you know, it's a guess. Do we put water on? Do we don't put water on? Do they look kind of weepy? Should we water them? You know, it's all just been a guess because we didn't have the information to be able to make informed decisions. So with the soil sensors, we can now do that. And the fact that he's pulling water directly out of the Snohomish River, that's much less water that's being used. Not to mention the fact that he's not using diesel pumps or running electricity. So it's a cost savings to him too. His gives him an alert right on his cell phone when he needs to add water. And then we go back down to Andrew's hay. He's using a big gun and his is coming out of the river in some places and not in other places. But the same thing, he now knows when he needs to water and when he doesn't, and then he can run it all from his cell phone. And that's it. I probably created more questions than I gave you information, so feel free to ask away.
Lindsay asked if you've thought of applying for Ecology's Streamflow Restoration Grant Program funding to expand this work.
Jessica. So Jessica Hamill, who we're working with, and Darcy, I think that's what you just emailed me about, didn't you? So then, yes, Lindsay, yes, we have.
Yeah, we're hoping to talk to Ecology soon, actually, about this project and a couple others.
Very good. Any other questions?
This is really cool, Linda. Do you need any sites?
For the WeatherNet stations, we will. Once we have their map and we have the funding, then we'll be able to go through and pick the willing landowner. And so they'll give me like a block, like with Stan or Sultan, they're like, we need something around the High Rock area. Okay, where's a good farm where this information is going to be really valuable to that farmer? And that's where the Groeneveld farm fit in really well.
Linda, can you put the link to the weather station map in the chat before we end the call today?
Sure.
Thanks.
Let me get back to it here. Will it let me do it from there?
Are there any other questions?
This is Valerie. Linda, if we're able to include a article about this in our swim utility newsletter that goes out to the public who are signed up to get our newsletter, what would be the key thing you would want to highlight to the public? And can we put a plug or an update about this in the newsletter?
I think the main thing is, it comes back to food resiliency. And how do
Right.
we make sure that we have a food supply that is going to be there into the future? How do we make sure that if something like COVID, where it instantly shut everything down, how do we know that we're going to be able to produce enough food? And then in addition to that would definitely be conservation. We're able to really conserve water usage while doing prescribed water usage. So making sure that we have the exact amount of water for that particular plant. And it also runs true too with pesticide sprays. So if you're doing apples and herbicides too, or depending upon what you're applying, that ATV can run down the orchard and it's measuring different things for different trees, are being measured for different things, right? So maybe this one has pests, but this one does not, and this one doesn't, but this one does. You can connect that up to a sprayer that is a smart sprayer that will just spray this tree and that tree and this tree, but not that tree, so that you're not coming out and doing all of the trees the same. You're just spraying the ones that need it.
So more targeted and efficient.
Absolutely. And then there's a cost savings to the farmer, obviously.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll follow up offline.
Great.
Okay,
David.
Rebecca asked, what does this supporting infrastructure look like for these projects? Are there new structures for equipment, etc.? So when you say supporting structures, there really aren't any. So the 5G infrastructure, it's very small and it just sits inside the barn. It's like the size of, a school locker. It's really small. It's not even that big at Andrews. So we have the large trailer that they used to call it the cow, which meant something. It's not like a cow. It had all of the main infrastructure in it that talks to it. That's parked out at the fairgrounds. So it is not on the farms at all. David?
So Linda, this is clearly really exciting stuff, and I can tell you're pretty jazzed about the whole thing. So, and it really has some great potential for benefiting farmers, as well as just through less water use benefiting our ecosystems. So just thinking about scaling this, are there grants or other programs that would help to scale this more broadly? And the second question would be, what is it that SLS could do to help promote that kind of thing?
I think the thing to remember with this is, well, two things. The ag weather nets can absolutely be expanded everywhere. And all we need for those is funding, and they're really not that expensive. And I think having the soil sensors with it is really key to get the best information that's usable. When we look at the information that, or the stuff that's on the farms themselves, those are test beds. And so we don't necessarily need to create more of those, but those are where the technology is coming about. So it can then at some point become available to other producers. For example, one of the new things that we have coming out to try here pretty soon is, it's kind of a virtual reality goggle. So let's say I'm working on my tractor and I just can't get something to work, and I'm underneath there and I'm trying to fix something and it's just not working, and I don't have time to take it up to Farmers Equipment to get it fixed, and they can't see it for another week. They can put on, the mechanic can put on his goggles, and I put on my goggles, and I'm underneath my tractor. He sees exactly what I see in real time. And then he can talk me through whatever it is going on in my tractor, so that I can be fixing it with the mechanic on the other end seeing what I'm seeing. So no need to haul the tractor in, no need to, get a trailer, try and get an appointment with the mechanic, have it sit there for 2 weeks until they can get to it, and no lost time. So if they can guide me through how to fix that in real time, then the tractor's back on the road. It costs the farmer less money and you're back working again. So that's one of the newest ones that'll be there soon if it's not there already. And then we'll be doing autonomous tractors as well. Those will not have a driver in them at all, which we already have GPS in tractors on the larger ones. And there's a lot of technology there, but this will require no one to be running the tractor at all. And there's a bunch of other stuff, but those are kind of the quickie ones.
So some of these technologies then that you displayed today and talked about are still being vetted, in other words, and are not quite ready for prime time yet.
The soil optics that's been out for a little while. It's still fairly new, but that's on the market and can be purchased. If you look at the Innovate Ag, and it's with a INNVO, the number 8 Ag. And they're doing a lot of this stuff already as far as the prescriptive spraying, the measuring of the applets and doing all that kind of stuff. They're doing a lot of research with WSU as well as with us. And they've got some smart orchards set up already too. And this is one of those sites.
So as far as the weather station, you just need volunteers for that there's funding enough to cover adding some more, is that right?
We don't have the funding yet. That's going into, Jessica, are you there? Did I see Jessica come on?
She was, but I think she may have left.
Oh, okay. She's helping to work on funding. Jessica and I worked on this together. And Darcy was saying we're going to put it in one of the grants that Lindsay brought up. So it's just a matter of finding the funding. They're actually not very expensive. So they're under $5,000 a piece, installed and ready to go. And that includes 3 years of monitoring. That's, yeah. So it's a pretty darn good investment when you consider the broad reach that it has and what it's able to do.
All right, good job, thank you.
Joycelyn had a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one is, were most farmers receptive of the new tech or were some very resistant?
So we used 2 farmers and I chose those 2 farmers for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're 2 different kind of farmers. One, Andrew's a commodity farmer. He does wheat, he does a lot of hay, he does some seed crop, but he does all commodity production. Swan's Terrell Farm does more niche production. They have about a 5-acre apple orchard that's all U-pick, that's intensively grown. They have strawberries that are U-pick. They have obviously the pumpkin patch and corn maze, but they're not necessarily considered a large commodity farm. And those were chosen so that we could really test out these ideas in 2 different situations. And then the second being, who they are and the fact that they would most likely be open to the technology idea and open to try new things and say, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do it. And they're also farmers that are well respected in the community. And so if it's somebody that everybody knows and they know that, these are good guys and they know what they're doing and they're doing a good job, then they're a good spokesperson for what we're doing.
Great. And then Joycelyn also asked if there were any barriers that people had to incorporating the tech.
The biggest thing was our time constraint and getting everything done. And then, there's a learning curve for sure. And the main thing is keep in mind, all the way through is this is brand new. This is new technology. This is technology that probably doesn't exist. So our 5G was not the regular call it piped in 5G. These are standalone stations. So no one else is able to tap into the 5G except that farm because it's a research project. And some of these farms, it's gonna be a long time before they get 5G. So just making sure that everybody was on the same page that, you know, it's gonna be a learning curve. We gotta take our time. We gotta figure it out as we go. But when we're done, it's really gonna create something fantastic that makes a difference. Did we get them all?
I think we did. Any final questions? Great. Well, thank you, Linda, so much for the presentation. And I jotted down the names of everybody at the session today. So we'll follow up the presentation with the couple of links that we put in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you.
This is great.
Good job, Linda. Thank you.